consistent.
I mean, that's what we do, though. Like, when you have a peak.
Huddle around as Climbing the Pocket Network presents Jayson and the boys talking everything Minnesota Vikings. Watch the countdown timer.
Away we go again. Lost like I'm lost on purpose. If found, please return to. Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road. I've been here before when I get home, Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road. I've been here before when I get home, My vision blurry, I'm paying the cost. I'm not enough. In fact, it's even better when you're not involved. When I miss your call, I feel that I evolve. Cause at your mention, I am more dependent than a college student on their parents or an old person on their pension. Not to mention, when you hit me on WhatsApp without attention and a bad booty bitch walks in, she looks tempting. Look, my Achilles heel is when I said what I feel, you said, baby, come home. And I don't think that I will, cause all this motherfucking stress is gonna get me killed. Woo. Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road. I've been here before when I get home, Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road. I've been here before when I get home,
Huddle around as Climbing the Pocket Network presents Jayson and the boys talking everything Minnesota Vikings.
No, I can't play these games. No, you can't disrespect and call me names. Sending me signals like you about to switch lanes. Well, go on, do your thing. Go on, do your thing. I mix champagne and propane, get lit. I'm trying to forget all the things that you said, all the things that we did. Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road. I've been here before when I get home, Girl, don't you know I'm lost on the road. I've been here before when I get home, Watch the breakdown. And I get home when I get home. You just gonna act like we normal now. Good luck. Don't you try to call me with that bullshit, telling me you're sorry. You act too quick. That's somebody else's problem now. You're somebody else's problem now. Don't you try to call me with that bullshit, telling me you're sorry. You act too quick. That's somebody else's problem now. You're somebody else's problem now.
What up, y'all? We are back. It is myself, a blank space in the middle, my man Myles, David. Let's get this thing going. Viewers, thanks for being here. We are back for another week of In the Huddle. Flip is out. Dave is in. Flip might be here later. But before we get going, Myles, my man, how you doing? How you been? How are things?
Good, busy, grinding through that Dakota Dozier tape. I gotta get a good beat on him. I gotta get an understanding of how good this guy's gonna be for the Vikings.
I mean, Tyler been saying guards don't matter, and the Vikings agree. The Vikings agree. Dave, we pulled you from the truck. We got you back on camera 2 nights in a row.
Oh,
how you doing, man?
I'm doing okay. Not real thrilled with this depth signing today of Dakota Dozier, but as I told a good friend, maybe it's so far down the depth chart, we don't need him.
All right, well, let's get into it. Let's talk about it because thought we were going to talk defensive backs, but obviously, the Vikings have kind of switched things up on us, brought back public enemy number one. But before that, there was another signing. So before we go and just dump all over Dakota Dozier, David, what are your thoughts? I mean, we have some other guards that are on the roster. We just signed somebody. People seem to be excited about him. Talk to me. Is Dakota Dozier so far down the depth chart, or is he still in conversation to start? Where are we at?
Oh, I don't think he'll start unless he had some miraculous sort of off-season training that suddenly improved himself.
You're underestimating this team, Dave.
They did trade their compensatory 6th-round draft choice, the last one they had, for Mason Cole, who played center for the Cardinals. Now, back in 2019, Mason Cole's a young kid. He's only been in the league 3 years. This will be his 4th. Back in 2019, he did play some guard, left guard for 4 games and right guard for a couple per PFF.
Is he any good, David? That's really the question.
Some of those game grades were decent and others were trash. He is better. If you take the centers and the guards and you lump them all together, he is better than Dakota Dozier. So that's not a hard bar to cross. I think I could be better than Dakota Dozier, but he is better.
All right. So with the recent additions, Myles, where are you at? How are you thinking about this? Because we endured an entire season last year with a certain segment of the Vikings fan base saying that we were a guard away from contention. Whereas another side of the fan base, maybe we'll say the analytically inclined side of the fan base, guards don't matter. They're not that important. The Vikings really don't seem to give a shit about guards, at all. There's not something they prioritize. It is not a position the Vikings deem to be important. But obviously we need to have very basic level guard play. And I believe you, Mary. I believe you can get in there and do work. So I believe you on that. So where are we at now? And what are your thoughts? Because obviously, we are Vikings fans. So the sky is falling today because the Vikings brought back public enemy number one. But what are your thoughts on what the Vikings might be thinking about the guard, the interior line, just that whole situation at this point in the offseason, given the limited resources we have, with the draft coming up? What are your thoughts? Do you think the starting guards are on the roster now? Do you think Ezra Cleveland's getting kicked out? What's going on with it, Myles? What are your thoughts based on these moves?
I mean, it's really hard to tell. So one thing we've heard, our friend in the show, Doogie, Darren Doogie Wolfson has come out. We've even heard people like Judd and Score North talk about the Vikings having interest in some offensive tackles. Eric Fisher's a name. I think Doogie name dropped Russell Okung today.
He did.
As another one that they have some interest in. Obviously, at the right price. The Vikings are at a point right now. They're pretty much willing to sign most players that are available for the minimum. So I think that's kind of where we fall into the Dakota Dozier situation. Is the Vikings, from my understanding, have had offers out to a lot of different offensive linemen at the veteran minimum and said, anybody willing to pluck and say yes, come on over. Obviously this isn't everyone, but they have a list. Dakota Dozier does fall on that list because of familiarity, and that the Vikings love, and people seem to love the continuity aspect of that. So that part makes sense. The Mason Cole trade, it really just feels like they were looking for a guard center combo mix and someone that could potentially fill that Brett Jones, Nick Easton, that type of role, someone that can play and jump into center if you need them to, but they might give you some of that flexibility at guard. So I like that move. It's a solid move because it sounds like they probably couldn't get Brett Jones back. Nick Easton told them no, so they just went out and got somebody that they think could fit what they're trying to do. So I'm fine with that move. I think he's a good competition, good guy that he'll probably compete to start. But I'm waiting to see them I'm waiting for something. It feels like there's something coming. I've been hinting and talking about an Orlando Brown trade. That doesn't fix the guard position, but what that at least does, what it would do is shore up your left tackle and both tackle positions. I'm not going to say it's shored up, but they're not moving Garrett Bradbury anytime soon. So you have those three in place, and then Ezra Cleveland fits in somewhere in the middle. So that leaves you that would leave you one major hole at guard. Maybe Mason Cole could be that guy. That's fine. I think, if Mason Cole has a baseline level, I love our new standard is now Dakota Dozier level. So are they better than Dakota Dozier? And if they are,
Drew Samia was worse.
Drew Samia was worse. It can be worse than Dakota Dozier. And that's what I remember saying that. But at the same time, what we're asking for from that left guard position is to not be what Dakota Dozier was. So don't be the worst left guard in football. Just be like the not worst left guard in football, and we'll probably be okay. And we've seen the Vikings be successful with not worst left guard in football. At Pat Elflein, we saw it with who was their left guard in 2017? Was that
our man? Is that our man Josh?
No, that was Nick Easton. So like Nick Easton was solid, but he wasn't great either. I think if you can get that level of play from your left guard, Pat Elflein, I think that's kind of where I see Mason Cole is kind of like a Pat Elflein type of player. He's solid. He's not the worst. He's not the best. Kind of fits in between. So I'm cool with that. But they still have like $7.5 million to play with. So it just makes me feel like something's coming. Some sort of trade, some sort of signing to try to shore up that offensive line. Because where they're at right now, so we've talked at length about the defense. I expect this defense to be significantly improved. I'm all good with going after DBs. We've talked about go get as many cornerbacks and DBs as you can because those are such important positions, especially corner. So they get Pat Pete, they get Mackensie Alexander, and then they get Xavier Woods to replace Anthony Harris. And that actually might be a slight of an upgrade, or at least not as much of a downgrade from Anthony Harris as people think, based off what he's going to be asked to do playing next to Harrison, and he's dirt cheap. So I'm really happy with that situation there. But what they haven't done, we heard Mike Zimmer, we've heard the Rick Spielman talk about the offense and how happy they were with the offense and how they're happy and content, quote unquote, with what the offense and where it is. So they went out and fixed the defense, but the offense has gotten worse. We can't sit here and say the offense is as good or even better than it was in 2020. And that's what worries me is regression is a possibility, and to expect some random rookie to be better than Riley Reif was in 2020, or at least play at that level, it's not fair to that rookie. Like, not many people are going to get it. You're not going to get a Tristan Wirfs type of level of play from a tackle, from a lot of rookie tackles. That's a rare situation. So to expect the Vikings to potentially, with that 14th pick or a trade back, get a rookie left tackle to play as good as Riley Reif did last year, that's just not fair to that rookie. And then what do they do at guard? We still continue to talk about guard, but also the weapons. Like, the weapons aren't better either. They brought back Chad Beebe. That's still their third wide receiver. So it's all this hope that you can find someone somewhere in the draft that'll help you. But going into the draft with that kind of mentality really feels like you're putting yourself into a really bad hole.
You're repeating last year. I mean,
you're repeating last year, just the flip side.
Yeah. So David, Myles threw a lot of stuff out there when he was talking about the line, and this is something that I'm glad we have you in front of the camera now, because I wanted to ask you for a little while. Because Ezra Cleveland, that's your guy.
Yes.
And Myles threw a lot of scenarios out there for potential left tackle. And he didn't really include Ezra in that list of possibilities. It was really looking outside the organization. So, David, I guess I want you to tell me from your perspective of the options that you've seen floated around, what are your favorite options for the left tackle spot? So there's, Eric Fisher coming off injury, not sure when he's going to be ready to go again. You have Orlando Brown. Many people very excited about him. Eric's not here, but as we discussed in the group chat, there's likely a bit more uncertainty with a player like an Orlando Brown, given the offense that he played in and how different it's going to be coming to the Vikings offense without the threat of a Lamar Jackson running and him just needing to pass protect in a different way than he has before. So you're getting less certainty, but potentially in an Orlando Brown than maybe Vikings fans are thinking, just because of that change in the offense. And then you got Ezra Cleveland, who's already on the roster. Many saw him as the left tackle of the future when he was drafted. I know you were one of those people. of the options that are available, what's your favorite? What would you see? Are you still team Ezra, or do you think that one of these vets would put us in a better spot?
Well, as Doogie said yesterday or today, the Orlando Brown talk.
What up, Eric?
Still live, and I would love Orlando Brown. That gives you 2 young bookend tackles. I think Ezra's young enough. He's athletic enough to adapt and still be good. And we'd have 2 bookend tackles. Hopefully you give them both extensions at, as we learned today, probably $18 million a year, a couple of years down the road. And that problem is solved. Then you tell Ezra, yeah, sucks to be you, but you got to develop as a guard. I like Ezra. I think Ezra could do the job. But if we move Ezra over to that left side, which I think he'll be fine, we then need 2 guards. And we've only picked up one that's better than Dakota Dozier. And just barely. So I would like to see an Orlando Brown trade. That's my favorite number 1 choice. The other tackle you mentioned, that's the old guy from Kansas City. That's a possibility. Okun, they talked about.
He's not that old. He's like 30.
Well, which is not that old for linemen. Linemen generally play to their mid-30s. But I like Orlando Brown for the long-term build aspect of it versus the other. But we'll see. Hey, Mike Zimmer has adapted and spent money and gone to fix the defense like it's nobody's business. There's no energy like that on the offensive side. And we need it because I agree with you, Jason. I don't think we stayed the same. I think we're going to regress if this is the situation we roll into camp with. So,
all right, well, let's talk about that because there's a bit of an irony in that Mike Zimmer builds his defense to stop the pass. Mm-hmm. Yet our offense is not built in that way. So Mike Zimmer knows the pass is the most dangerous part of an offense. Yet our offense, for whatever reason, is not built to do that very same thing. But Myles, obviously we got to talk about it because, the Vikings have stocked up and, frankly, they've made some smart moves in terms of what they've done to address things on the defense. So, given where we were a couple weeks ago and kind of how we were feeling about the offseason, the only really big moves were, a nose tackle. People maybe feeling like we jumped the gun or paid a little bit too much for an older corner, not still in his prime. With the value signings the Vikings have made in the defensive backfield, how you feeling about things now? Even when you look at Pro Football Focus's draft guide that just came out, they have us looking pretty strong when you start looking across that defense. How good do you expect things to get for us, especially when you consider how bad they were last season?
Well, you always see people talk about, I'm going to start with the edge rusher. So the Vikings were targeting an edge rusher to start free agency. That was then they kind of ended up with Dalvin Tomlinson instead. And I think, it's a nice consolation prize in that what Dalvin Tomlinson can do is help plug up the middle or rush through the middle. He's not an elite pass rusher from the interior, but he's also no slouch either. So he's like that souped up Shamar Stephen. He's going to do what I think Mike Zimmer and Andre Patterson were hoping Shamar Stephen could do, but with a more of a athletic souped up ability. So what he does is help pressure the quarterback from the interior. And, Zim's creative with his blitz packages and things. So what he can do with the front seven, he can get more creative with his front seven. And even Harrison Smith in that scenario too, he can get creative with all those guys because he can leave his cornerbacks and his safeties and his DBs more on an island or more in situations where you trust them to cover. And so when you can trust coverage, you can send and do a little bit more creatively up front to go get the quarterback or make the quarterback uncomfortable. So that's what I love about it. And I think they took the opposite approach last offseason where they didn't think that they needed to worry about cornerback as much, which I'm sure Mike Zimmer was killing him, I would assume. But I love the approach now. This has always been my issue with the Vikings is they're really good at course correcting themselves after they've had a down year. I just want to see the consistency from it, but I expect that the DB room to be significantly better. And what I love is you have penciled in starters of Pat Pete, Cameron Danson on the outside. In my opinion, it's Jeff Gladney's job to lose. He's the first-round pick. He's the guy you invested in. He's the guy that you put in the slot. Coming up, he had a knee surgery last spring. No OTAs, none of those things. And he played through that knee injury. And he wasn't that great.
Positions. Yeah.
And then he had to cross-train outside and inside in this defense, which is really hard to do. So I think if he focuses on the nickel position, you're going to see significant play from Gladney. And like I said, he's that investment. So just come in and say that Mackenzie's the day one starter, I just don't agree with that because he's getting a vet minimum deal. And I think they're just going to let him play around and maybe they do more dime packages and things. But Mackenzie's more of that, like your number 4 cornerback. And then what happens with Mike Hughes is a big question there. I'm a huge Mike Hughes guy, but obviously the injuries have been a major problem. The ACL and then the 2 neck injuries. You have no idea what's going to happen with him. So what I said going into the offseason was make sure you plan as if he's not going to be around. And they've done that. And so that makes Mike Hughes your cornerback 5 or 6, depending on, if he's healthy. That's a good thing because if he's healthy and he can contribute for you, that just makes your DB group even better. So I like that approach, what they've done there. And then you added, like I talked about earlier, Xavier Woods. He was good in 2018 and 2019 in Dallas, playing more of that high safety look, and especially in this defense when you can let Harrison Smith play near the line of scrimmage. Xavier Woods is pretty good over the top and can move around a little bit there. Hopefully they build that chemistry. And we've seen a lot of safeties play well opposite Harrison Smith. Anderson Dejo, Robert Blanton, Jamarcus Sanford. Anthony Harris built himself up to be obviously the best out of that bunch. But so we've seen a lot of that. And Xavier Woods is still 25 years old, so he's a guy that, I'm excited to kind of see grow. And if he can become your long-term safety, that's, it's a buy low risk that I'm excited to see.
You're on mute. Can't hear you.
Uh-oh. Can't hear you, Jason.
Kyle, we started this conversation with that whole purpose of
yeah.
Look at me. I'm on mute into the void, but I had to cut Myles off because the comments, I'm over here reading what folks had to say, and the comments have kind of piped up with, if Flip was here, something that he said, in the group chat, and then many others have said that, like, they don't want to hear any more about the DB room. They don't want to hear about how many more toys Mike Zimmer has. Mike Zimmer's supposed to be this elite defensive coach, but the defense only seems to be good when we give him all the things that he needs. And so I'm going to bring it back just because I do want to, acknowledge that, Anthony asked a question and then, I think it was different Dave came in and basically was like, I ain't having it. I don't want to hear it. So Myles, another option, Dave, feel free to chime in because we're going to be talking offensive line again. Another option that we didn't talk about is a trade up. It was something that was thrown around. I think it was Peter King a couple weeks back talking about us trading up to take a tackle. How are we feeling about that as another possibility for the Vikings in fixing the offensive line? Are we good with that? Does that make sense? Myles, you go first. David, you bring us home.
So what my whole thing is all about, I'm not team trade up unless it's for like a quarterback or you're like later in the draft and it doesn't cost as much to move up. I think those are fine, like late first, second round type of moves. That's not an issue for me. The Vikings are at 14, so if they're trying to get, let's say they're trying to get ahead of the Chargers at 13 and go up to 12 and swap with who has it now? The Eagles have that pick now. God, it's moved so much. So let's say they just want to move ahead of the Chargers to get their left tackle, and it takes like a 4th, 5th round pick. I'd probably be okay with that just because, at least they're targeting someone. But overall, I'm team trade back. I'd prefer to, let the board fall to you. Let's say there's multiple offensive linemen available. I'd prefer to trade back if there's an opportunity there, recoup another pick, and still get a guy that you like with one of the, with the trade back. That's my preference because the Vikings we've talked about, they don't have a 2nd round pick. They can move up if they want to get another 2nd round pick, but it's still going to cost a lot of money to move up from that 78 pick to get into the 2nd round anyway. So my thing is, why not try to recoup that 2nd round pick by trading back or even get a 3rd round pick, whatever it is. But that's why I'm a big proponent on the Orlando Brown trade. If it were to come to fruition, hypothetical swap 27 for 14, and then we get Orlando Brown and move back to 27. What that does, and maybe you throw in a fourth or one of your thirds, fine. I'd actually be fine with that at the end of the day, because what you do is you get your left tackle, a young left tackle, and you also get basically that second round pick back in what turns out to be your a late first, and that's you're getting a 2-for-1 in that situation. So for me, you can use that 27th pick on maybe a wide receiver, an edge rusher, something like that. That'll add another value pick for you rather than trading up to get that offensive tackle. So for me, I'd prefer that trade back scenario.
So Dave, what do you make of the argument that I've seen that teams should just not trade with the Patriots or the Ravens, especially when it comes to a position like offensive line, where they are historically very good at evaluating talent at those positions. They do a very good job. They understand what players can and can't do, and they understand very well how to maximize players within the context of their scheme. And so often what happens is that players will play in those schemes. PFF will grade them very well. They'll go someplace else, and there's typically some regression. And then it always seems like maybe 2 years later, they end up back in either Baltimore or they end up back in New England, starting all over again. So, like, what are your thoughts on that as we think of the Orlando Brown? Because that seems to be the way that most people are thinking about it. Like, Orlando Brown's where we want to go. He's a name we know. He's a proven talent. Gets us, like, kind of our second-round pick. So, like, on paper, this seems like all good things. Is there anything about this that makes you at all nervous when you're considering taking a player from a team that seems to know what they're doing? Like, why would they let him go?
Because he's demanding to play left tackle. He wants left tackle money. And it's a cost deal. Left tackles get paid more. He wants to play left tackle. They've already got a good left tackle. He's already demonstrated he can play left tackle at a high level. And they don't want to keep two good left tackles on the roster. It's too expensive. So that's where that possibility of a trade comes in. Now, Ravens are also good at trading just about anybody, including defensive ends like last year. The Vikings are good at it when it comes to defensive backs, i.e. Alexander left, didn't play well. He's back. Hopefully he plays well in reserve as quarterback 4 or 5 or whatever. Now, they talked about trading up. Generally, I agree with Myles. You don't trade up unless it's for your next franchise quarterback, period.
Uh-oh. Here he goes.
There's one other exception that you may, that is for a franchise
Julio Jones?
Altering left tackle. And there's only one blue chip left tackle in this whole draft today.
So why do we expect him to drop far enough?
He's not going to. He would have to drop to like 9 or 10 before we even had a chance to move up, and he's not going to drop that far. There's no way. If GMs would be stupid. I'll repeat that again. Stupid to let him drop that far. I mean, you don't find tackles of that quality in every draft. It's maybe once every 10 years or 20 years. You don't do it. So he's never going to get there. So it's not worth even entertaining. And the cost to trade up that much would probably cost a couple additional future first rounders or a trade of somebody big. And I don't think the Vikings are going to do that. They've been playing it cheap all this offseason. You know, vet minimum deals, offer on the table, and a lot of these players would be Lawson's or what was the other one, Wilkerson or something like that. The other edge they wanted, it's not enough money. You're not paying us what we're worth. So no, and they've lost.
That's what makes me wonder. That's what makes me wonder, Dave. They've got $7.5 million right now, and they still have the 7.9.
3 triple. Yes, we do. Unfortunately,
what happened?
Just a comment Dave just put up on screen.
Thanks. Well, so that's why I'm still expecting something to happen. I'm not saying it's going to be like this world-altering move that they make, but I think Nick talked about it. They essentially have like $14 million when you include the $7.98 million from Rudy that's going to hit in June, and I think we saw Over the Cap published like what they expect as of right now, what they expect the draft classes to cost. I think the Vikings currently were at like 3.5 to sign their draft picks this year. So you take 3.5 away. Vikings are looking at like 11 or so million in totality. Not that they can spend it all right now. So,
but we also know they could free up money if they had to.
And they could free up money with a Harrison Smith extension. They could do
a Danielle Hunter extension.
Hunter, yeah. So that's why I'm still I think they're trying to do something. It's just hasn't been able to hit yet. That's what it feels like, because this team, especially when you got a Mike Zimmer and a Rick Spielman who are on the hot seat, let's be frank, they have to win this year, or at least not win. When I say win, they have to make the playoffs. That's the Wilf's goal, is to get to the playoffs. And that's
9-8,
9-8, 10-7.
Weird number.
So it's weird, but so that's why with them and their jobs on the line, they're going to push the cap as much as they have to make sure that they have as much talent on this roster as they can get. And they've done a good job on the defensive side. But to Mary's point, Mike Zimmer, you're a head coach. You're not a defensive coordinator anymore. So you got to play both sides. We got to help that offense, and it can't just be in the draft. You have to go out and get somebody that can be an impact for your offense through a trade, free agency, something, because you can't just sit back and expect your offense to still hum and do what it did in 2020, 2019 with an inexperienced offensive coordinator and question marks from rookies that you don't know what to expect. Justin Jefferson fell in your lap. That doesn't happen every year. So it's hard to expect that type of impact from rookies. It's not fair to them either.
How y'all gonna feel when they spend all that money on Geno Atkins and Carlos Dunlap?
If you get
Geno,
yeah, he's gone. But if they get Geno cheap, I don't have an issue with that. He'd be on that pass rushing down where he came in, and I suspect Tomlinson would move over and Pierce would come out. And if they wanted to relieve those, they'd put in some of the other edge rushers up the middle. I don't have an issue with that because I think they can get Geno cheap. But they've got to pay attention to fixing that offensive line or have a plan. And right now, it sure as heck doesn't look like they have one, nor does it look like they care a lot. And that's what is disheartening.
And add another weapon. If Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen get hurt for any period of time, you go from one of the better duos in the league to having one of the worst overall wide receiver groups in the league with one receiver. And then you just double or triple team that guy and the offense. And everybody talks about Irv Smith, and I'm excited about Irv Smith to get an opportunity. We haven't seen them throw to tight ends that much. So until we see them do it otherwise, it's hard to expect them to throw to the tight end. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. yeah.
Well, that's quite possible.
You are not wrong. Is this Rick Spielman?
They do need a new edge.
Just like Garrett Bradbury. We didn't want to move back from 18, even though we could have got two other better offensive linemen than Garrett Bradbury.
Yeah, no, but they do need an edge. An edge, unless you think Quantum or Weatherly is going to step up and suddenly get 10
but that's what
this year. You're going to
Dave.
need
That's where we talk about Zim can't have everything.
So if he can't have everything, edge is more important than linebacker. I also expect a linebacker to come off the board 4th round.
I don't care about that. They do it every year.
I know they do.
I mean, 4th or 5th round.
I'll bet he's going to be really Michael Parkins,
and too small.
Yep. But that's my thing is if the Vikings have put themselves in a situation where if the one position they have to go quote unquote lesser at is D end opposite Hunter, you got to deal with it, Zim. Like you have to. You guys have to coach around that stuff because you got all your DBs, you got your linebacker and Anthony Barr back because that situation, they got him to take a pay cut and restructure and do all that stuff. Hunter's expected to be back. You got Dalvin Tomlinson. Like, dude, you can't have everything. So you got to, he made his choices. And so now Stephen Weatherly and DJ Wanham and whatever else, they're going to add at least one more edge rusher. That's what you're going to deal with. it can't be a first-round pick unless you find a way to go get a left tackle and another guard before the draft. Like, that's the only way you can make that work. Otherwise, you got to kick rocks in.
I agree with you.
All right, so Myles, you mentioned wide receiver again.
Always.
I mean, the other dreams have died.
Always.
The other dreams have died. So who's out there at this point? So like pretty much every other name that you've said this offseason, you know, like the final nail in the coffin was your man Blythe signed and then Dakota Dozier re-signed, just like boom, boom on the timeline to rub it right in all of our faces. Who's left? Who's out there? Like, we're talking about wanting them to like plug holes in the offense before the draft. We talking about them bringing in, you know, an established, just average type veteran player to come in on the offense. Like, who's left? I know we love Forrest Lamp because, you know, people loved him pre-draft and now he's available again. That should tell us something, everyone. But we all loved him pre-draft, and so he's back. Forrest Lamp is a name. Who else? What else? Who's out there that we should be excited about at this point?
Excited's a strong word, but
not disappointed by if they were to sign it. How about that?
So obviously Forrest Lamp's one, just because the one thing Forrest Lamp was good at in 2019 was pass pro. I wouldn't say great at it, but that was his strength. His athleticism should make up for his lack of run game, and with the Chargers last year, in my opinion, I think he'd be fine in this system. I think he fits this system with how athletic he is. And having a better pass pro left guard isn't a bad thing. That should help guys like Garrett Bradbury. We don't have to go – I'm not going down that road again. So Lamp, I think Trey Turner is another like low risk. I won't call it high reward, but low risk. Maybe you get him back to a closer to 2019, 2018 level of Trey Turner than what we saw in 2020 where he was injured. He was a right guard only, though, so that's the hard part is some of these guys are going to have to probably – at the point the Vikings are at where they're going to bring any of these guys in, they're going to have to be flexible with where their positions are in the interior offensive line. So appreciate that, Don. Tell
your friends, Don.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, tell your friends. But so like those would be the first couple names. For me at offensive line would be Trey Turner, Forrest Lamp. Those are probably the top two guys left. Austin Ryder, the Kansas City Chiefs center, he was really good. He's still available. Now he's only basically played center, but the Vikings are so desperate that maybe he can play guard. I mean, he was really good. I expect him to go to like the Falcons or the Rams or something. But either way, he's really good. He's better than your current center by a long shot. That'd be like a really weird Pat Elflein type of move. But I mean, the Vikings are kind of in this weird all-in type of scenario. So that's offensive line. Tackle, we talked about Russell Okung. Eric Fisher's injury situation makes it really hard to give him any type of guaranteed money now because you can't really see where he's going to pan out in the next 4 or 5 months. And then I guess Mitchell Schwartz, it sounds like he's waiting until the summer to sign somewhere, so kind of hard to figure that one out. Then wide receiver, like if the Vikings wanted to go get a cheap vet wide receiver, guys like Kenny Stills are out there still. He's a guy that provides impact. He's good. I think you could take a flyer on a Marquise Goodwin. He's really fast. Demir Bird for he played for the Pats last year. I know their pass catchers are really bad, but he's a burner and he's a guy that you could ask just to be a deep threat for you. Kind of fill that. Who's that guy that we had in 2018? Robinson.
Kirk Solomon.
Yeah, Kirk Solomon. So like he could kind of fill that role, which fine. I mean, the Vikings could use another deep threat. So like, and these guys would come cheap. So you know, just maybe just taking a vet min flyer on a guy that can move a little bit. D.D. Westbrook, he was pretty highly regarded coming out of Oklahoma. Played for Jacksonville. He's actually pretty good his first few years in the season. Holy shit, he was signed for the vet min. Blythe was signed for the vet min. Crazy.
If I remember correctly, yep.
But I talked about that. I tweeted about that Blythe situation. He either come to the Vikings and not know what you're going to play, whether it's guard, center, left guard, right guard, or go to the Chiefs, the best team in the league, or arguably the best team in the league, and play center. I mean, I don't blame him for picking that one.
If the money's the same, you go to the one that has a chance to win Super Bowls.
Yeah,
He might also want to play center over playing guard, so that could be that choice too. But yeah,
if you get a right guard only, expect Cleveland to move to the left side.
Right, which I mean, maybe that's more comfortable for him. You know, so.
Okay, talk to me about Oli Udoh, guys, because like he's a name that come up again this week. Well, folks want to know. JR pre-draft, he was a guy that JR thought had some nice traits. Is he someone that maybe we're sleeping on in this guard competition?
No,
I think he was viewed
Definitive.
as the Rashad Hill replacement, swing tackle type, but we brought back Rashad Hill. So I just want an offensive line coach that can develop offensive linemen. I don't care who it is.
You cheer for the wrong team, Dave.
you do.
We haven't had one since Mike Tice, period. I can prove that.
I mean, we had a bit of bad luck in there too, but I feel you. Well, we talked about all the things I think we're going to be allowed to talk about today. Offensive line. At this point, there doesn't seem to be any great solutions, but if they do sign Forrest Lamp, I feel like we'll be a little less upset about it all. It will get rid of some of the anger around Dakota Dozier. Creed Humphrey. That's Ryan's boy, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's Ryan's guy. So just by virtue of it being Ryan's guy, Creed Humphrey's probably a great player, but I can't co-sign that because I'm against all players from Oklahoma. Just because of Ryan.
Richard,
it's all Ryan.
Thoughts on Eric Fisher? The only misgiving I have on Fisher is that he won't basically be available to later in the summer, and he's basically saying, I'm going to wait. So I'd rather have things squared away before then than having to rely on hoping that towards the end of the summer we pick him up.
Well, and anything you look at his medicals right now won't tell you much. Like there's only so much. He tore his Achilles in late January, so it's not like there's much you can know in early April besides surgery went well. Maybe he's walking, whatever. But there's only so much you can know. You need to know 6 months down the road what that injury and where he's at.
Right. And
so
the fastest heal time on that is a little over 6 months. And it's normally a 12-month recovery, if at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Drew.
Dave, block Drew.
One thing we didn't talk about was the O'Neal to left tackle possibility. I'm sure that I know that they've been still in that situation where that's in one of their scenarios that's possible for them. I'm not sure what it would take for that to be the case. And I know we've all talked about why would you move a guy that's ascending and really good at his position and flop and switch his position. It's not an easy transition to make. I think O'Neal would be fine because he's a good player, but at the end of the day, it's still hedging a bet on something that you don't know 100% about.
I have uncertainty at 2 positions, Myles, where you could have uncertainty at 4 positions across your offensive line.
There you go.
Exactly.
There you go.
Hey, now, I think O'Neal could make that switch
relatively
easy. I'm one of the few that are in the minority. He played tight end. He's ambidextrous. He played left tackle in college as well. He's used to the left side. I don't think that switch would take long. And it's just like Ezra Cleveland. If Ezra Cleveland played a year on the right side, he could bump out to the right tackle, or you could have Rashad Hill. It's however it falls. It's pick a card type deal is how it's going to be, and that's what's so frustrating because it shouldn't be that way. If we had an offensive line coach that knew what he was doing,
there it is.
I don't. Yeah.
Hey, Dennison had some good offensive linemen. It's just we don't see it on the Vikings.
No, I agree. My thing, I'm not saying Dennison's great or anything, but there's only so much. He has to work with what he's given too at the same time. Now Dakota Dozier.
It's the scheme. It's the scheme.
And
Dakota Dozier, but it's the scheme. It's the fact that we're prioritizing dudes who are light in the ass over people who can anchor and pass block. And that's why until the team stops prioritizing run blocking over pass blocking from the people that we look at in the draft, then we will just continue to be in this situation year over year over year because it's not like they haven't invested.
right? Unless they randomly hit on the guy that is really good at both and he's light. Like that's just like it feels like at this point when you're trying, like that's why it feels like it's easier to find tackles in the draft because you know what to expect a little bit more from those guys. But if you're trying to find a specific type of interior offensive lineman, the one hard thing to know is how are they going to translate with strength at the next level when they weigh 300 pounds? You don't fully know if they're going to be able to hold up against a Hakeem Hicks. You know, like you don't know that. So it's really hard to project those guys. And so it's so, yeah. That's why, like, everybody, like, you'll see people talk about Orlando Brown's not athletic enough. Who gives a shit? Like, Dalvin Cook's fantastic. Dalvin Cook's going to make himself work. Like, he's going to get his yards. And his offensive line has been trash anyways. Now, if you keep pass pro, Orlando Brown can get to the second level. I don't need him to do more than that. Dalvin Cook's already going to outpace him anyways. If he can pass set and pass block and not get bull rushed, I'm cool.
Dan, you are correct.
Sold.
Yep.
Randall McDaniel was probably the best guard, and Steve Hutchinson was right behind him. Yes. But if you have heavy,
Mary, calm down, Mary. We're just trying to get to average here.
No, but
we're
the heavy in the rear
maybe
end,
under a new regime, domineering offensive line. What is that? What does that mean?
Well, the heavy in the rear end that could do that. See, the problem with the offensive line on that is Dalvin Cook is so good. He doesn't need them to be great, right? He finds the hole.
And they haven't been great in the run game.
Right.
It's the scheme. It's the scheme.
It's the scheme that's doing it. Because if you have a domineering offensive line where the guys are heavy and can push, the more power game, they're pushing defensive linemen 1, 2, 3 yards off the line of scrimmage. So you're going to get 1, 2, 3 yards off the line of scrimmage and then let the running back cut and do whatever he's doing. Here, they care more about can they move and get to the second level because they think Dalvin Cook will be to the second level and be able to take advantage of that block.
Yep.
What's the second level of pass pro, Dave? Explain that one to me.
There is no second level of pass pro. It either works.
Well, maybe that's the problem.
It's a go or
maybe
no
that's
go.
the problem.
And they've no-goed.
All right.
Anyways, with that, I think we've been on long enough, and I've definitely voiced my opinion on the offensive line.
All right. Well, as per usual, gentlemen, thanks for coming on and getting angry with me about offensive line. Viewers, thanks for all the comments. Thanks for the interactions. Listeners, you should be a viewer. Listen to Don. Come in here, join the fun, help make the show with us in real time as we go. Flip, we're going to talk about this offline. Dave, thanks for jumping in. In Flip's stead, Flip will be back tomorrow, I think, right?
Yes,
Flip
he
on
will
tomorrow?
be live tomorrow because Viking Hot Takes has moved to Wednesday for this week with a special guest. Eric Thompson can't make it, but it'll be a special guest you recognize and love to hear. Has his own great takes and his own show. And then Vikings Happy Hour will round out the week on Thursday, and then we'll start it all over again next Sunday with two old bloggers.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, there it is. That's the show. Dave, play the music.
Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. Skol, everybody.